Welcome everybody. I am Kim Hill. I'm the manager of library relations here at SAGE, amongst other things. And we're really happy to have Dr. Hesse-Biber with us today. She's at Boston College. Let me pull up her, I thought I had it up. There we go. She's a prolific publisher, or prolific author with SAGE. She actually wrote a book called Am I Thin Enough Yet?, which I think I probably need to read. It was one of Choice Magazine's academic award winners back in the 90s. She's also the co-editor of Emergent Methods in Social Research and the Handbook of Emergent Methods, as well as the Handbook of Feminist Theory. She's a professor at Boston College. She heads up the Women and Gender Studies program. She's a professor of sociology, and she's going to talk to us about research methods. So how many of you here in the audience know what a research method is? You're doing great. So I think as librarians, a lot of us, and I'm speaking for all of us, I think a lot of us have degrees in maybe history and English and didn't necessarily do a lot of social sciences research when we were undergrads. So the idea of what students use with research in class when they use research methods may be a little bit vague to us, and so Sharlene's going to teach us about that. So can you kind of start off with just telling us how you teach research methods in your classroom and what you use with the research projects with your students?
Okay, if I were to say, what is a research method? It's a tool, it's a technique for having you systematically ask a question about something. We know that in olden days, people also consulted folks about the social world. It could be your tarot card reader. It could be a mystic. It could be the authoritarian person in the village, the elder, the wise elder. So we get knowledge from very different venues. But research methods really are a set of tools that have been established, a set of measures, a set of standards, so that we make inquiry disciplined. So that you can replicate things, you can validate things, and even if you're doing methods that are more quantitative, that give you numbers, that ask and test out hypotheses, educated guesses about the world, others can follow what you're doing in a kind of standard way. And even if you're asking a sort of looser question that deals with emotions and experiences, what is the lived experience of freshmen entering predominantly Western, Midwestern schools that come from the North? What is that experience like? What is the experience of an African American student entering a predominantly white college? What is that experience like? So that methods are tools, and what tool you use depends on your question. So methods are always tied to questions, and that's the fun of it. Students will learn techniques like doing surveys. How many of you have seen surveys? Okay, online surveys and so on. Well, surveys are, we're going to survey you after this. But the interesting thing is, surveys are a tool to get at some specific, if I'm asking you very specific questions, they're getting at things that you want some, specific answers to. But if I'm asking you, what is it like for you to be at this meeting? Can you tell me more about that? I'm not sure I could get a survey question that would cover all those emotions. I might want to ask an in-depth interview, another kind of technique that gets at a slightly different question. So working together, research methods provide students with disciplined steps along the way for getting at what it is they want to know about the social world. And that's an enormous set of incredible questions and skills that we can bring together in the classroom. So in my Women and Body course, of all places, Women and the Body, students are doing research papers. How do we get them to narrow down their topic? We need a librarian. My best friend in the classroom is my librarian, Kate. Kate came, she's in the basement of my building. She's in the social work library. I came upon Kate one day and said, Kate, I need your help. She said, I can help you. Can you come in my classroom? My students are having trouble figuring out how to narrow down their research question. No problem. Do you have Canvas? Canvas is one of the tools that I work with. It is, it's like Blackboard, and it allows you to contact your students, for them to contact you, where they can get their syllabus, where they can get all the information, all the resources from the course, including the readings. Kate said, guess what? I can put a segment on Canvas that says, how can I help you? And I think we have this site, the Canvas site, where Kate created for me a little button the students could press that says, how can I help you with your research? And if we're going to go to the next slide in a minute, and you'll see Kate's picture on the next slide. And Kate customized a research guide for my students. But the first thing we needed Kate to do to put the name and the face and the person together was we brought Kate into the classroom. And she gave a 15-minute talk. The students loved her. Kate had so much fun, I had to kind of pull her out of there. I'm teasing a little bit, Kate, thank you. But she was phenomenal. The students had a name, they had a face, they knew the person. They ran down to the social work library, and she showed them how to use all kinds of databases to narrow down their questions. So we began a relationship with a librarian, the beginning of the class. Kate then went on and said, how can I help you finding ideas for your topic, finding books, identifying the best journal and news database, and so on. And I have prepared a research guide to help you with all of this. I said, Kate, are you kidding? No, if we go to the next slide, what does Kate do? Well, women and the bodies, getting started with your research project. She tailored those kinds of questions. Mind you, I have 50 some odd people in this class. They want to do a research methods paper. Where do they start? Well, most librarians, I was told, don't know a lot exactly about the nuts and bolts of methods. So Kate and I began our journey talking with each other about student needs, helping to narrow down questions, narrow down student databases, and eventually when they got to certain ideas narrowed down, the one thing we asked them to do is look at templates, look at studies, research, empirical studies that have tackled that kind of problem. What method did they use? How did they bring the question that's narrowed down? Let's look at that narrowed down question. What does it look like? And then what did they do after that? And so it all came together. How I got this started was I was very worried that how was I going to individually meet with 50 people maybe 5 or 6 times during the course of the semester. And Kate really said, I can look at their problems. You can look at them. I'll suggest databases, and you can look at the substantive issues. I said, great, we have a deal. And that's how we got started.
It's a great story. It's a great story on how you're using your librarians to help you in the classroom.
I have said the librarian is the best kept secret to research methods.
So how many of you guys in the crowd are reference librarians or staff the reference desk? Okay. So as the reference librarian, we've got students coming up and asking us all sorts of things, and you have to go through that reference interview process of figuring out what it is they really want versus what they actually asked you.
Exactly.
So can you help us understand kind of keywords that to listen for, or types of questions that they might ask when they really are trying to find out about methodology?
Okay. So if one of you doesn't mind, okay, can you help me out? You can be the librarian, I'll be the student. Can we do that? Okay, so can somebody help me out a little bit here? Who wants to be the person? Okay, all right. So you're in Sharlene Hesse-Biber's research methods class, and I'm coming up to you. Oh, hi, Amy. Hi, Amy.
Hi.
I'm really confused.
Okay, what are you confused about?
My professor wants me to do this study. I mean, she doesn't want me to do it. I mean, I want to do it, but I've never done a research paper before. I know I should not say that really, but I've been studying to the SAT tests all the time, and my writing skills and my thinking skills, they're kind of gone. But don't tell her that. So here's the thing. Amy, I need your help.
Okay.
I started on these databases that somebody told me about, but when I went on the website in my college, I'd like to use Google, but I was told not right now. They want me to use databases, but I don't know what to do. What's a database, and where do we even find one when I don't even know what I'm doing?
Okay, so let's take this back to an area you're comfortable with.
Okay.
And we'll talk a little bit about if I were going to let you use Google, or perhaps Google Scholar. Do you know what Google Scholar is?
Yeah.
Okay, so Google Scholar sort of frames that a little bit into more of that academic information.
Right.
What is the information you're looking for? What kinds of things would you be searching for in Google or Google Scholar?
Well, what I'm interested in is how magazines, if at all, impact women's sense of their bodies.
Okay, so you've given me a couple of pieces of information here that talk about the subject areas you're looking at.
Right.
And so we know that we're dealing with women's studies in general.
Right.
And so let's take a minute, we'll look at the library website here.
Okay.
And I'm going to make some assumptions that we're all structured more or less the same. And we have here a page, if you go from the home page, whether it's under Find or whatever, you'll see a link that says databases.
Okay.
And so that's going to be your first cue. That's the word that your instructor was sort of pointing you toward.
Right.
And these are those databases.
Right.
And what that is a more subject-focused version of Google Scholar, basically. That's going to give you a more structured way to search it.
Okay.
But it's going to get you to those journal articles and conference proceedings and other reviewed work that are going to be useful to the research papers that you're writing.
Okay. So where do I begin? Can we take one database?
We certainly can. And as an engineering librarian, I am out of my depth. but aside from the women's...
Well, you've got all these folks. Help her out.
Outside of the women's studies areas, I would say it probably would be worth looking at PsycInfo as well, because the psychology piece of information is very much going to infect women and the body and how they have those perceptions. And so let's look at PsycInfo, which is psychology abstracts in an online kind of format.
Okay.
And so we'll show you how to navigate through to that.
Excuse me, what's an abstract?
Okay.
Going for it.
I mean, what is that?
So an abstract is a short summary of the paper.
Okay.
Typically we'll in a sentence or two give you, or for each of these sections, we'll give you sort of what's the background, sort of how did they get to what they're doing, what did they study, so it may be a one or two sentence thing that says this is a qualitative research process using case study method, and then it'll give you briefly this is what we found and where to go, so that abstract is going to, in about a paragraph, give you a high level encapsulation of what the article that you found is about.
Okay.
And so a lot of the databases carry that as part of their original name, because it included not just the journal title and the title of the article, but it gave you that abstract information so that you could help figure out if it was going to be a useful resource to you.
Right. Now, one thing my professor is really, really sticky about.
Okay.
Only peer-reviewed journals. Now, the first thing I want to do is go to Cosmo and let's see. I mean, all my friends are doing research, and that's what we research. And I don't get it. Scholarly journal articles, is a book review a journal article? I mean, I'm confused. Can you help me out?
Sure. So you sort of have alluded to this the way you structured that particular statement to me, but Cosmo doesn't count.
But I love reading it. And they have articles in there all the time about magazines and body image, and it's so interesting. Those other articles,
They're dull, I know. And there's no pretty pictures, and they aren't color, and they aren't glossy, but that's where the academic research is going to be.
Okay.
So, but what you can do with that information out of Cosmo is it can be that germ of your idea, and it can be that starting place, and it might even have pointed you to this is somebody else who's doing that work, or a place where this is the research I need to find because it's what's behind that article that I found in Cosmo.
Funny you should say that, because that's what got me started, just reading one of those Cosmo thingies, with that body image and before-after pictures,
Sure.
digital dieting, all that stuff. The Kardashian sisters.
Well.
Okay, all right. So yada yada. You know where I'm going with this.
So once
Thank
they've
you.
got that,
Thank you.
Once they have that germ of an idea and they've identified their topic and they found all of the literature stuff that they need in order to do the research, what's the next piece of content that they need to start working on the methodology for that research project?
Well, The first thing I suggest that they do, because I really, and not just because my newest textbook called The Practice of Qualitative Research is being published by Sage.
Cha-ching.
Ding, ding. Okay, I'm teasing a little bit.
Okay,
Yeah, okay. But here's the thing. Sage has this incredible website, and one of the things I love about it is the Sage Research Methods Map. And suppose, for example, that you are interested in putting together a set of interviews, that you actually want to start interviewing some college-age women about the freshman 15. What is it like at the end of your freshman year when you've gained 10 to 15 pounds? Or 50 pounds, whatever. So how can we begin to understand how to conduct in-depth interviews, how to take a sample? What's that? How to then, all the steps that are involved. If you have a question and you want to look at the lived experience of gaining the freshman 15 and what that's been like, from, could say, a convenient sample of, beginning sophomore students who have already gone through their freshman year, how do I start to do that? And the Sage map, maps out different methods, techniques. And so I would want to go to the map for in-depth interviews, for example, or semi-structured interviews, or just plain interviews, and look at the various strands, the various options of finding out more, whether they be research articles or books on that particular method. And they also give you a sort of history of the methods, and who's written what. And very often, in certain ways, you can press on a button and it will give you a synopsis of an article about that, or maybe even show you a sample chapter. And I always find that that's a kind of beginning point for getting their feet wet about a given kind of method. Of course, you can go to Google, and you can go to Google Scholar and type in-depth interviewing, and you'll also come up with a wealth of information as well. But showing them how in-depth interviews, these techniques have been tied to questions. Usually I'd say, look at an article that you may find on the map that is doing something similar. How did they go about doing it? So I find that students need some templates in the beginning as guides to examples that are really good, that are peer-reviewed, that are in journals. And if you go to the Sage site, you can find that very easily. And it's very easy to navigate. And also, Sage has something called method space. And there's always a discussion going on. So if you have a question, you can type it in, and an expert, this is all voluntary, they'll come back and help answer your question. I'm not sure what kind of sample I can use or should be using for this kind of question. Can anybody out there suggest something to me? And sure enough, somebody, a group of people will type back and give you suggestions. So you're not, again, by yourself in this process, that there are a set of networks out there that you can tap into. And I'm aware of the Sage networks because I've done some publishing with Sage, and I find that the students have found that very helpful. But there are other venues as well.
She wants to repeat on the webpage what you're looking for in the method space.
It's called Method Space. And we could we bring it, I don't know if we could bring it up on the website, but if we have time, we'll also try to bring up the research methods map after the talk maybe, and we can show you what I'm talking about. I think it would be very valuable.
Yeah, can you maybe talk about how the SRM database of all of our little green and blue books and other research methods, encyclopedias and handbooks, how those are used across the spectrum of the age range and the
Right.
graduate level? And is it just for undergraduate? How do
Right.
the graduate students use it differently than undergrads?
That's really great. The thing I like about the Sage Methods book, Sage has made a commitment to research methods, a big commitment. And I find it's like a go-to place. I sound like an advertisement for Sage, I guess, but I feel that way. I mean, there are other venues as well. Oxford is one of them I publish in. But Sage has made this commitment to not just have textbooks about research. They started, which was dear to my heart, the little green books the blue books, and now they have another series on mixed methods books. And so they're really moving ahead with a range of different methods. So if a student says to me, I'm really interested in in-depth interviewing, or I'm interested in surveys, is there a smaller book that is a concise reading of sort of the how-tos of this, but goes into those special things about, say, surveys? I go, yeah, get the little green book on surveys. Or if you want to do analyses of data that's more than cross-tabular analysis, you might want to get the little green book on regression analysis. So these are sort of boutique special books that have grown as SAGE Research Methods has grown. You can do the blue books, and you can also get some really neat, in-depth look at qualitative methods, books, blue book on ethnographic methods, a blue book on interviewing, and so on. So a blue book on how to do qualitative data analysis. So the price of these books is not, huge. It doesn't cost a lot, but they provide students, especially that want enrichment at the graduate level, with a go-to concise place where everything is, and where everything, if you want to follow up, you can also get even more information on. So how graduate students learn methods is not that different, but they usually come to a graduate course having had an undergraduate methods course. So you're not necessarily starting out with no knowledge of how to do this, except maybe if they come from a different area like English literature and have now decided to take a PhD in sociology. But very often they want to go more in-depth on certain topics, and they go on to do dissertations and so on that are going to require a lot more in-depth knowledge of a range of different methods. Usually with undergrads, it's an overview course with a range of methods thrown at them. And the real challenge is to get them interested in figuring out how to use these methods. They can learn about them, but they don't, after they finish, it's hard for them then to practice the method. So I think you want a textbook that really does the how-tos for them. How do you link a problem with a method? And that kind of praxis approach I find is critically important to draw students in. I say to them, research methods can be cool. And they go, really? I go, yeah. Why don't you come along and let's take a problem. Let's see how we might answer this as a group. So we do a lot of in-class exercises about the linking of questions and methods, and they get it. They begin to really get it with a lot of in-depth examples. And it becomes exciting. It really does.
Now, is that what you meant by blue book?
The blue books are the qualitative books, and the green books are the quantitative books, and the mixed methods books, they're not the small books, but they're now having a series of mixed methods topics. Yeah, we call them green-blue. They're close to my heart. Those little books are really adorable.
Yeah, in the print versions, they are small little handbooks, and they are literally tiny blue books and tiny green books, hence the name, the little green books.
Yeah, and the thing with the little part, if you're intimidated by methods and you see this little book, you go, I can do that. I can do that little book, and it's not overwhelming. It's doable. Okay, what's in the green book? How to do surveys. Okay, start to finish. Everything you need is in that little green book. It's like your recipe. It's like the be-all, end-all. Now, you may want to do a really, online survey, so you might want to get the green book that maybe is updated to doing online surveys. The first early books were not about online research, right? So they adapt, little books adapt to technology and research, which is incredible. But in that little book is a microcosm of taking you through beginning, middle, and end. It's really a concise way to learn about something quickly. That's not, what can I say, compromising the scholarship and the complexity. That's what's so beautiful about these little books. They're not dumbed down books.
You could use it
I use it as an add-on to, for example, in my qualitative course, I may take one or two as add-ons because the text only has one chapter on it, and I know there are going to be a lot that want to do more in-depth understanding of, say, interviews. I might give them a blue book on interviews. If I'm doing surveys and I do some data analysis and I have a student that's really great with statistics, I may want to give them the green book in regression. Even though there's a chapter on regression in the methods book, it's not enough for them. They want to know more. So you can see it allows you to expand or contract. If there's a student that's having more trouble, I might give them a green or blue book to go more in depth about something. Yeah.
So we're going to try to wrap up here
Sure.
and then do some questions and answers from the audience for some more
Sure,
members.
of course.
But do you have some kind of final words of wisdom that you would like to give to the librarians in the crowd on how they can help support their faculty and the research methods teaching that they do?
Well, I would say introduce yourself to, we have a sociology librarian, and she comes around, and she actually called me up one day and said, how can I help you? And it was really refreshing, and that's how I got to know Kate. Kate was in the basement of the building in the social work library, and all of a sudden she introduced herself, and I said, I got to talking with her. And it's that kind of link, it's that kind of connections. We have all these resources in the library, and we know that students aren't going to the library, right, to get books out of the library anymore. So how do we connect all the wealth of what all of you have gained to putting it to use in the classroom? And I would ditto that also for faculty doing research. I didn't fully understand the wealth of information at my fingertips doing my own research projects. And when I went to make a visit to the library and met the research librarian and mentioned a few things, she really cut down the time I had for researching these topics, because she gave me some other information I hadn't known about. So it's not just for my students, it's for the faculty, that we need to forge a better linkage between the wealth, especially with digital, you're housing all this digital material. So my need for you is going to go, it's not just what's in a book in the library, it's all these incredibly digital documents that you are archiving that I need to know more about. Okay?
Right. So questions from the group.
I know you have some
There's
questions.
a mic coming to you.
I'm trying to find out where you get the little green and blue books.
Well, you can get them from the SAGE website.
We actually have them digitized in a product called SRM, Sage Research Methods Online, and that is our database that we've built here that includes all of our green books, all of the little blue books. It includes a lot of our encyclopedias and handbooks. It includes some journal articles that we've pulled over. It's a one-stop shop for research methods.
Anybody ever tell you that that's an annoying acronym? Because for those of us in the engineering side of the house, those are standard reference materials for calibrating equipment.
That's funny. So what are the questions you guys have? I know you have some burning questions.
So do you believe that other instructors are teaching research methodologies in their humanities courses and social studies courses, or is that unusual?
It depends on whether or not they're given a research paper to do, and that could be in the humanities, that could be in many other types of courses. The interesting thing that I've noticed is a professor will give an assignment, the end of which is the research paper, but nothing is talked about after that. I mean, the student is looking at it on the syllabus. They have, you can put yourself in my position. I gave a 10-page research paper, but I started at the beginning of the class about getting the problem. I knew they were going to have trouble. But I don't think there's that perception out there among faculty that many students don't actually know how to do this. So what happens is 2 weeks before the end of the semester, all heck breaks loose. And I don't know, maybe you've experienced this, but one of the very upsetting things to me is the increase in the number of you can buy a research paper websites where students, and then the response is, well, I'll give you turn it in to look at the student's paper and make sure they didn't plagiarize it, or it's hard to say that you bought it. But here's the thing, there's got to be a better alternative to that. We want students to think. And to do a paper means they need to think. They can't just put the right SAT question in the multiple choice exam. They know how to do that, but we need to get them to get thinking critically about questions and skills to bring to bear in answering increasingly complex, wicked questions in this world. And unless we do that, we're not doing our job, and that takes a village to do it. It takes a librarian to do it. It takes a professor who cares about their students, who's willing to put in the time, the elbow grease, to work with them. It takes textbooks that are engaging for students, that they can learn from, they can take with them, and to build that knowledge as they go along. And so it takes their understanding of how do you write something up. What's an abstract? What's an APA format? What's that? Where do I find that out? Well, it's on our enrichment site, Resources for Writing. I've got to be what I would call, if I'm going to give this exercise, I have to do my job as a teacher to make sure that they have what they need, and don't assume that they're walking in and know everything. They don't. And they're afraid to tell you sometimes. And you need to be gentle but firm in helping and working with them. And that takes a village. I can't do it alone. Yeah.
Just a comment.
I was wondering if we as a librarian practice as a researcher and thoroughly familiar with the research method, do you think that might help? I'm curious about your perspective. How do you feel?
I think one of the interesting things I was mentioning before in speaking to the SAGE group here was that Kate, the librarian I worked with, she wrote up, and I don't know, we can't see it now, but she wrote up a research guide that was tailored just to my class. And when I went online, I often use the OWL site, the Purdue University's OWL site. And the OWL site, I mean, I can't reinvent the wheel as the teacher. I can't do everything. But what I know is that the OWL site speaks to my students. The OWL site's at Purdue. It helps them with how do I write an abstract? How do I narrow down a topic? But there's that personal touch. If the librarian knows about the OWL site, they feel comfortable talking about narrowing down topics. So that increasingly, the librarians that I'm using for Women in the Body share the research guide. Like Kate just left her position to go to Boston University. The new librarian is building on that and adding to the research guide that she created. So I think librarians know a lot about research topics, and there's more that you can do, and the skills that you already have, that we can talk together. And I need your help with 55 students. I cannot do this. And what Kate did is really work together with me to help me do my better job, to help me give my students what they needed, because I couldn't do everything to make that assignment doable for them. And you have to do outreach. If you give a paper that's 15 pages and do nothing, I don't think you're really doing your job as the teacher. And it takes a lot of work. I think there's somebody else.
I was just wondering, do you also have the librarian come in to do like a full class session?
Kate came in, my librarian comes in 3 different times to solidify her relationship with them. And they all go running now to the social work library downstairs. I gotta go see Kate. Like she's their best friend, their newest best friend. The name, the face, Kate comes in 15, 20 minutes a shot, sometimes longer, as I said. And if they need her, there's a button on Canvas. Contact your librarian. It goes straight to Kate. They go down there, she gets right back to them. It's amazing. Once you establish the connection, it's amazing. I'm counting on the librarian because I couldn't do my paper assignment without her or him. So, yeah, you become an integral part of our course.